Hey everybody, so I released a video a couple days ago talking about how to build a proper fragrance rotation. Today I'm going to follow up on that a little bit and give some of you new people in the fragrance community some tips on how to properly collect fragrances, what not to worry about, other pointers that might help you. So I believe I have 10 tips coming up. All right, so the first one is a really big one. Do not blind buy. Even if you like certain notes or certain fragrance profiles, you won't like it until you actually try it. Especially fragrance notes, because they could be manipulated to smell many different ways. You know, your vetivers, your patchoulis, oud, tonka bean vanilla, rose, iris, mint, lavender, even musk can come across in many different ways. So just because you like a certain note doesn't necessarily mean you like all facets of that note. And you could even go to your big box stores, your Macy's, your Bloomingdale's, your Nordstroms, Saks, Neiman Marcus, and even small spot like Scent Bar, which carries a lot of niche fragrances. You could try niche fragrances out in certain stores. You just need to do your research. Don't blind buy, especially if you're brand new. It is the fastest way to lose money when you don't like the fragrance you buy. Piggybacking off of that, number two, you don't have to buy off of big box stores. We have things called fragrance discounters. We have brick and mortar stores, but the big popular ones are online. You have your Fragflex, your Fragrance Buy, Joma Shop, Fragrance Net. There's a lot of legit fragrance discounters online, and like the name suggests, they'll get you a discount on the fragrances you want to buy. Sometimes I've seen discounts as deep as 80% on the discount cheapies, and even on your big box designer type of releases you could easily find 30, 40, 50, sometimes 60% off of the original MSRP when you go with discounters. If you want to build a decent sized collection, this is the most attainable way to do it. Discounters also have access to fragrances that aren't sold at big box stores. So if you start building up a good designer collection and want to evolve your nose, you can always try new things on these discounters. Again, try to buy before.
I can't read.
Again, that's just the easiest way to save money when you're collecting fragrances. Especially nowadays, fragrances can get very expensive. So use a discounter, it'll save you a lot of money in the long run. Following up on tip number two, tip number three, if you buy from a discounter, expect some type of delay. It's not gonna happen all the time, but just go in there expecting your package to come in a little late. The reason why I say that is because the past couple months or so, I haven't bought a lot of fragrances, but the few that I have bought, they have come way late. Not in a bad way.
Pause.
Whoa, that was too close for comfort.
But a couple days late. If it comes in early, that's a very good gift. Appreciate that. But more often than not, they're probably going to come in a day or two late. For newbies, tip number 4, do not buy from eBay. I'm not saying eBay is a bad place to buy from. There are legit sellers. But the problem is there are a lot of fake sellers too. When I first started, I started using eBay. It was so complicated trying to find legit sellers that are selling good fragrances at good prices. For the casual person who doesn't want to put in a lot of work of the certain sellers they should be buying off of eBay, just don't buy off of eBay. If you're more seasoned, you understand. And even some of those seasoned people will tell you, try to avoid eBay at all costs. At one point, they did have really good deals, but with something like Joma Shop, Fragrance by Fragflex, those deals aren't as good as they used to be on eBay. Just spend maybe $1 or $2 more on Joma Shop or Fragflex. There's also a lot of deals on eBay that are too good to be true. 99.9% of the time, that is always going to be the case. A designer fragrance that normally sells for $70 at regular discounters might look enticing on eBay because it's $44. But when you get it faked, you got robbed.
Do you speak any English?
You got robbed. Tip number 5. Don't get too influenced by online reviews or by your favorite influencers. Try to take what they say as an opinion, not as objective fact. This is fragrances we're talking about. What you like, other people might not like. What they like, you might not like. Scent is extremely subjective, and you need to put in the work to actually smell the fragrance before forming an opinion. I've always said influencers should always influence you to try, but never to buy. Tip number 6 for new people in the fragrance community: don't worry about niche scents or artisanal fragrances just yet. They're more expensive for a reason, usually higher quality of oils. Sometimes it's just a name brand, piggybacking off of the successes of the earlier years. But yeah, they're just really expensive for the most part. There are some exceptions to the rule, and maybe I might get into a video on that in the future. Really good, affordable niche brands. But the reason why that they're niche more often than not is because they're trying to make bolder fragrances compared to the designer market. Again, some niche brands and niche fragrances do have some type of designer appeal, but more often than not, they don't. And another thing, piggybacking off to the first tip, they're not as available to try in store. Again, you go somewhere like Scent Bar that has a lot of niche fragrances to try. If you want to try it, go to Scent Bar or Neiman Marcus, Bloomingdale's, Saks. Somewhere that sells niche fragrances. Always try before you buy. For a newbie, in my opinion, I think you should try a lot of designer fragrances. Build up a collection of designer fragrances first before you step into the world of niche, just to get an idea of certain scent profiles, certain notes that you like. Number 7 is a little complicated because even 4, 5, 6 years ago, clones were very looked down upon. Within maybe the last 3 years, I want to say, maybe 4 years, clones have been widely accepted and appreciated by the community. And I think they are good for what they do, but do not buy a clone expecting it to smell identical to the fragrance they're copying. If that's what your intention is in buying a clone, you're probably not going to appreciate what you get. And yeah, clones are very cheap, but sometimes if you like a scent profile, especially an original scent profile, just try to go for the original if you can. Obviously, again, there's some exceptions. If you're expecting a clone to be 1-to-1 in identicality with the fragrance that it's copying, you're probably going to be disappointed. More often than not, they're usually putting a twist to make it just different enough. Clones have been doing that a lot more recently too. And also with these clone brands, they might have access to high quality synthetic and sometimes even natural ingredients, but more often than not, the ingredients that they're using are not the same quality of ingredients as the fragrance that they're cloning. Number 8, store fragrances in a cool, shaded place. Try to avoid direct sunlight. Direct sunlight is the fastest way your fragrance will break down. Also, do not put your fragrances in your bathroom or another place where you have extreme temperature swings. Again, that's another way your fragrance will break down. If you have drawer space, dresser space, any closet space, or big boxes where you can store your fragrances and places on the floor that are shaded and away from sunlight, those are probably the best places to store your fragrances. Number 9 is quality over quantity. Again, when you're building a fragrance collection, it's so easy to fall into the trap that more is better. For fragrance content creators, yeah, that's the case. More is better because they're collecting all these fragrances to make more content. But at the end of the day, a lot of these content creators have thousands of fragrances, and even if they wore 2 fragrances a day, they're not wearing all their fragrances in a calendar year. Do you have all the space to store all these fragrances? I don't know. That's up to your discretion. In my previous video, I talked about building a functional rotation. It was 8 fragrances. I think that's how you should start your collection. I'll put a card somewhere on this video. So watch that video, get an idea of what you should be collecting before moving forward and evolving your nose. And another thing too is be aware of where you live, because the climate you live in, the temperature, the humidity, all of that plays a factor into the collection you should be building. If you live in a very tropical environment, you're probably going to want something a little fresher, sometimes fruitier, maybe bright. You don't want it to be overbearing with loads and loads of vanilla if you live in a tropical environment. On the contrary, if you live in a very cold environment, your freshies are not going to really work that well. They're not going to last that long. You need something heavy and dense that'll latch onto your skin and perform for a good amount of the day. So be aware of where you live and also what you do on a regular basis, where you work, the hobbies you're doing, other stuff that you're doing on an everyday basis. That does also play a smaller role in the fragrances you should be buying. Number 10 is something that not a lot of people talk about, is be aware of the power of scent memory. Fragrances and scents in particular can remind you of a specific time, place, or a certain event in your life on both ends of the spectrum, either very, very good times or very, very, very bad times. This is more so just because I don't want you to wear fragrance you really love during a really rough time of your life and just have you associate that fragrance with those negative times of your life and you falling out of love with the fragrance you used to really love. So just to play it safe, just avoid that. I'll give a bonus tip here too. If you do follow all of these tips that I've given you, tip number 11 would be
WTF. What the hell?
not that. Jeez. My God.
Damn!
Buy from rack stores. Nordstrom Rack, Macy's Backstage, Ross Dress for Less, Burlington Coat Factory, TJ Maxx, TK Maxx, depending on where you live, Kohl's. These places sell authentic fragrances for discount as well. These are going to be more of your cheapy gems, and it's better to do more research before trying to buy these fragrances. And sometimes in the case of TJ Maxx in particular, you can find niche fragrances at TJ Maxx depending on the location that you're close to or that you visit on a regular basis. It's a fun way to build your fragrance collection without spending too much money. And it's also that thrill of, okay, I'm around fragrances that I don't necessarily have to buy. I won't buy them, but maybe in the future time that I go to a rag store, I find something I've been looking for a while. Again, quality over quantity. Just because they're cheap at rag stores doesn't necessarily mean you have to buy them. Try to just look for fragrances that have interesting note breakdowns or fragrances that you've been looking for a while, that you've tried in the past. You can find them at rag stores sometimes. Hopefully these tips help you. If they did, leave a like, drop a comment in the comment section, subscribe to my channel for future content. And yeah, I'll see you soon.